Hey everyone, here is my first Godzilla review of the year 2018, first of several, of course. I believe at the end of the last Godzilla review I did, which was King Kong vs. Godzilla, I said I was really excited about the next movie. Turns out I got a little mixed up. The next two movies in the series came out in the same year. That didn't happen very often, but this is kind of an anomaly in that sense. This one came out first, not Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, which was the movie that I was referring to. That doesn't mean I wasn't excited to watch this one, I just was pretty amped up for Ghidorah, and so it wouldn't have really mattered if I hadn't caught the mistake ahead of time. I've already seen Ghidorah anyway, and I don't think it would make a huge difference if I messed up the chronology a little bit. But anyway, I caught it in time, and that will be the next one that I review after this one. And while we're on the subject, I would just like to know, how is it pronounced? Is it Ghidorah or Ghidorah? I've heard both. I would like to say it correctly when I do my review of the movie, so if you could just let me know your opinion, that would be great. Anyway, today's film, released by Toho in 1964, is Mothra vs. Godzilla, Japanese title Masuda Tai Gojira. You might also see the title listed sometimes in reverse order as Godzilla vs. Mothra, or, if you watch the English version, in which they do not mention Mothra's official name, the title is Godzilla vs. the Thing. Yeah, makes you think of a couple other creatures very different from Mothra that Godzilla could be fighting. In this film, a massive storm causes Mothra's egg to wash ashore. An evil businessman buys it from the locals who found it with the intention of making it a tourist attraction. Mothra's telepathic twin fairies come to ask that the egg be returned, but their requests are denied. Meanwhile, something else has been uncovered by the storm. You guessed it, it's Godzilla, and he's ready to take on the world. The main characters who team up in this one are very similar to the main trio in 1961's Mothra, a reporter, a photographer, and a scientist. The reporter is played by Akira Takarada, who had a major role in Gojira 10 years earlier. His photographer assistant is played by Yuriko Hoshi, and the role of the scientist they befriend is again played by Hiroshi Koizumi. I thought at first he might be playing the same character as he did in Mothra, but when the twins appeared and he didn't seem to remember them, it became pretty obvious that wasn't the case. Which does remind me of a big question I've been struggling with here. Do any of these people remember the stuff that happened in the previous movies? We aren't starting with a blank slate every time. There's some level of continuity within the movies, so my natural assumption is that people must have at least heard about the previous events, even if they weren't directly affected by them. We know from the last movie that it dominates national and international news every time a giant monster appears and wreaks havoc in the city, and the fact that every time Godzilla shows up for a rampage someone cries out his name indicates recognition. Yet there are some things that characters don't seem to remember or to know about, and I find that confusing and a little unlikely. The whole thing's unlikely. I basically just turn my brain off. It's just that every now and then, in the back of my head, I'm just like, doesn't anybody remember? They come across these little fairy girls and they don't say, oh, I remember that guy a few years ago. He had you captive and he was selling tickets to see you sing, and then that giant moth came and attacked the city. Nobody remembers this? Anyway, I try not to think about it that much. I don't think these movies are supposed to be that complicated. Mothra vs. Godzilla boasts yet another excellent Akira Ifukube soundtrack. The score helps make Godzilla's figure more imposing as he's tromping across the screen. He seems to need that extra boost. Is it just me, or does Godzilla seem a little clumsier than usual? According to Haruo Nakajima, the man in the suit, this stumble was scripted. I wonder why. Is Godzilla okay? Is he tired? Is he fed up? But whether he's a little weary from repeatedly being killed and then coming back to life and then being attacked with heavy artillery or not, Godzilla is still a worthy antagonist. His first appearance is pretty awesome. I like the way he turns around and gives everyone a dirty look, just daring them to mess with him. He seems really angry and malevolent this time. Going up against him is Mothra, now assuming the role of a supernatural rescuer, sacrificing herself to save her egg, her people, and her island. For a giant moth, she has quite a compelling personality, which I think goes a long way to making this a very entertaining story, with a monster fight you can really get invested in. And if I learned anything from this movie, it's that you should never underestimate Mothra. She's a lot tougher than she looks. Where Mothra goes, so go the mini fairy twins, known as the Peanuts, played by Emi and Yumi Ito. Their songs are even more mournful here than they were in Mothra, and given that this film is a little more serious than that movie was, it's understandable. There's a dominant anti-nuclear testing message in this one. That's a theme that runs through all the films, as these monsters wouldn't be there attacking Japan and endangering the rest of the world as well if there had never been atomic testing. But it's especially marked here. There's talk of the weight of human responsibility, and at one point, when our leads are asking the twins to intervene on their behalf and ask Mothra for help, and the wary natives are standing around in disapproval, it's almost as if the entire human race is on trial. Like I said, this is mostly a more serious film than some of the previous ones, but there is a little comic relief snuck in there, mostly from this one reporter who's assigned to watch Mothra's egg, who always has his own soft-boiled egg on hand. It's kind of a weird thing. I think the pacing and editing in this one is especially good. It moves along at a quick speed, and neither the monster scenes nor the human scenes drag on too long, and that's something that I have noticed with some of the previous movies. There are also some really good special effects. I'm enjoying seeing them change and improve over time, and there's some very cool stuff in this one. So I really enjoyed Mothra vs. Godzilla, and I'd say it's probably the best Godzilla sequel I've seen so far. I hope you enjoyed this review, and that you'll stay tuned for the next one, and I'll see you then. Thanks for watching!